Welcome to the Local Energy Podcast. My name is Peter Brecht. I'm here with my co host, Wade Spear. Very excited today about today's conversation with Brian Davis. We were talking before this, and I think Brian works in midstream, but he has a little more of a defined definition of what he does. This is something that we've really never talked about before on the podcast. We've kind of gotten into some production stuff, but Brian, welcome to the podcast. I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
And you're in Houston, right?
I'm located in Houston, correct, in the energy corridor.
Right in the energy corridor. Awesome. I've been out there many, many times. Love your town. It's just a big circle, and it feels like I could spend hours on your freeway, but absolutely worth it every time.
I actually live out in the country. I'm about 45 minutes from work in a tiny farming town. It's great.
So help us understand, what you currently do, and I think that'd be a good place to start since I kind of botched the intro with just midstream.
I consider exploration and production to be one thing, and then refining, marketing, and transportation as another. And all I've ever done is the refining piece of that. Been all over in refining, just kind of scattershot through the industry from operations to maintenance to turnarounds to yield accounting. And now I'm actually in fuels compliance. So the renewable fuels that you hear about, I calculate our renewable volume obligations, stuff like that. So technically part of legal now.
Gotcha. And what's your background? What was your first job in the oil industry?
Literally a week after I graduated high school, I was working in a refinery doing construction. Started out as just a regular laborer, and I also enrolled in the local junior college and started working on an associate's degree in instrumentation. So I started out doing industrial measurement type stuff. Went to work for a major oil and gas company in 1995 and was there for 20 years. And in those 20 years, I was an operator for about the first 7 or so. So I was a shift worker for the first 7 years or so. I had that instrument degree, and they happened to need some instrument techs at the time. And they were they were looking at a merger at the time, so they didn't want to change head count at all. So there were about 3 of us in operations that had instrument degrees, and that was actually required at that particular refinery. An associate's degree was required to be an instrument tech there. So moved to instrumentation, started going to night school, and actually working construction. I'd paid my way to get my associate's degree, and then the refining company that I was working for paid for my bachelor's degree. I went to night school. They paid for it, but they didn't give me any allowance as far as schedule goes. So we were working turnarounds. I was working this this was before we had to take fatigue days. So I was working 7/12s during turnarounds and driving to Houston at night about an hour and 20 minutes to go to night school till 10 o'clock, and then getting home at 11:30 or so and doing it all again. So I got my business management degree and moved to yield accounting at that time. So I did yield accounting for quite a few years. Then had the opportunity to move to our turnaround team. Was a turnaround project controls coordinator. So I was the person that got in trouble when we blew the budget on turnarounds. And then I was also a turnaround coordinator for a while before I resigned that company and went to work for a smaller oil and gas company. Started in yield accounting there and have since moved to fuel compliance.
Let's go back just real quick on the instrumentation thing. So I live in California. That's not a secret to anyone that's lived here. And you cannot just go to a local college here and talk about oil and gas. It's not something that's offered. We don't talk about that here. That's just not what our state does. But you can take all kinds of other classes that they probably don't have in Texas. That said, what do you do in instrumentation? Like from just a high level, what is that job? What's the day to day for that one?
Instrumentation is really interesting. It's industrial measurement at its core. It's a process controls. So if you're in your car, your thermostat tells you how hot your engine is. If it's overheating, your thermostat might be stuck. So that's sort of like an instrument in a
Okay.
refinery. Work on a lot of motor valves, worked on control loops, tuning control loops, things like that. PID controls, proportional, integral, and derivative.
You're taking me back to school now.
I barely remembered that. Yeah.
Is this a hands-on job or is it with a clipboard? Like, is it like a visual? Because we talk to people that'll do visual inspections, and they use tools that aren't so hands-on.
No, much more hands-on, very,
Okay.
very blue collar. And I've told so many people it's a fantastic career because there's instant gratification. Someone calls you because something's broken. When you walk up to a valve or an instrument in the field, it's broken, and when you walk away, it's fixed, and that feels really good.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's great. One question I had earlier, you were mentioning you use the word turnaround a whole lot. Like not super familiar with that. So what are you talking about when you use the word turnaround?
Refineries are a 24/7, 365 operation. They
Right.
never the we try to never shut them down, but there's some things that just have to be shut down to be worked on. A good example is like a catalyst in a reactor. It just gets tired. Or, you've just reached the end of life on some bearings on a big compressor that doesn't have a backup or something like that. Every once in a while, you have to shut everything down. Most refineries, most units, rule of thumb, try to go for a 4 to 5 year run. So you have a 4 to 5 year run, and then you just have to pull the plug, and you're just working elbow to elbow 24/7 to get that to get that refinery running again.
What you're describing here is sort of the lifespan of the refinery equipment. I'm probably way off. I'm out of my league, but is that sort of the idea?
I wouldn't say lifespan, I would call it life cycle.
Okay. Okay.
So there's a life cycle to everything in a
Okay.
refinery.
My only experience in trying to understand the refinery world is I was at a conference and they had a guy that was talking about, refinery in California. And it was a pretty stiff room, but nonetheless, he mentioned the word cracker and, all these things that you have to use. And I was just like, okay, what is that? And I remember writing the note down and then leaving and then trying to research a little bit to understand it. And is that something that you guys work with?
Yeah, he was probably talking about an FCC, a fluid cat cracker. And yeah, that's what that is. And I'm not an engineer. Again, Wade might be able to answer this, but when you crack a molecule, it's when you start getting the enes, I call it. So ethanol will turn to ethylene, propanol turn to propylene.
Okay. Interesting.
That's
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 all
as
pretty
high that everything else is over
high
here.
level. Okay. All right. And so we talked a little bit before, there are so many products that comes out of one barrel of crude, right? It's not people think, gas just comes out of the ground and that's what it is, or oil just comes out of it. There's so many products that we pull from that. Are you, I guess, in your current position, you're looking at yield accounting. So do those things tie together at all, or are they completely separate?
No, they very much tied together, and it depends on your local market, where your refinery is and where you're shipping your products to. People talk about crack spreads a lot.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's a better spread on the distillates, which is like diesel and jet fuel. Sometimes there's a better profit to be had in gasoline. You purchase, or what I call an oils planning department. They purchase a crude slate looking at their desired outcome. So you can tweak things within the process, but all in all, a barrel of crude has a certain amount of distillate in it, certain amount of gasoline in it. I don't know if you've heard of like a gold assay. Like you would, if you had a bar of gold, you would take it to someone that could give you an assay that says this is 99.9% pure and it weighs this much. Crude has assays, so the the crude assay will tell you what it should have in it. They also have something called a simulated distillation, SIMDIS, I think some engineers call it, which also tells you, okay, out of this barrel of Alaskan North Slope crude, you should get this much distillate, 44% distillate and 5% light ends, and this much middle distillate, stuff like that.
Okay. And in the yield accounting world, so like what does that job look like now? Are you just getting reports and effectively kind of analyzing what's coming in and what the output is, or what is that kind of the idea?
Yes,
Okay.
the instrumentation that I was talking about earlier, all those automatic gauges, temperatures, flows from the field, they come into the control room. They usually call it the house. So the operator is sitting there. DCS, digital control system, running the plant. And then that data goes from that DCS to a data historian. Pi is a typical one. There's also a system called PhD. So those Pi and PhD historize that data, and then you can pull that into spreadsheets or a yield accounting system. Aspen Tech has a good yield accounting system, and PIMSoft has a yield accounting system called Signify.
Okay.
So
And
you pull all that in and you do a mass balance. So there's a law of conservation of mass where mass can't be created or destroyed. There's not a law of conservation of volume. Volume can swell. There's the old joke about what weighs more, a pound of feathers or a pound of lead.
yeah, yeah.
So volume can change, but mass is mass. So you do a mass balance across the refinery and say, okay, we brought in 10 pounds the front door, only 9 went out the back door. Where'd we lose a pound?
Gotcha.
For my senior project, we had to use, I think it was Aspen HYSYS is what it was called. And we had to like make it would like diagram essentially like a gas to liquids processing plant. And I tell you what, it was, oh my gosh, we were completely lost. It was a challenge trying to track those mass balances and do all that stuff.
It's very interesting. I love it. It's a good field.
So one question I've got, you kind of talked about crack spreads and all these different things, right? So uh say that like you said, jet fuel, the profit on it's just going through the roof. Within your plant, can you just go ahead and switch essentially over to where you're kind of weighting more towards your jet fuel production versus your diesels or your gasoline? And it, like, if so, like what kind of a timeline are we talking about? I would imagine that involves quite a few different processes and changes in temperature, pressure, all these different things.
Right. So there are knobs that you can twist, like I mentioned earlier. It is a long process because you have to nominate crude, way out. So the LP modeling, I think it's linear progression modeling engineers, probably like yourself, are looking way out and saying, okay, here's what's expected in this market, in the Pacific Northwest or the Gulf Coast or something like that. We know we're going to want to be making more jet come the summer driving season. So they're looking way out. I've never been involved in the trading side of crude, but I know it's a long process.
Okay.
And they do buy a slate to try to, maximize profit.
Right.
So when we're looking at events like, Cushing, right? I think it was a week or two ago. Cushing was, they had the drones flying over showing that the tank lids were down and all that. The process to refill those, is it 3 months out from when something like that would recover? Is that the process that we're saying takes a long time?
Yes, it does. I'm not gonna get in over my head on that. I've never done that as a career, but yeah, there's a lot of elasticity. So there's some bounce back. I know you've talked about when the theoretical price of crude has gone to less than zero before. They call it contango or backwardation. Luckily, I don't have to deal with that on a daily basis. So these I don't know what to call them, data agencies like you were talking about, they can do things, within the law that are, they can fly over a tank farm and see, use a drone as long as it's not a no-fly zone and give their give their customers data about things based on some really tight inferences they can make. The EIA is the Energy Information Administration. They're under the Department of Energy. That's their job too. So there's required reports that refiners and terminals have to turn in weekly. So, there's that part that you have to report. And then what you're talking about with the drones is people trying to glean information above and beyond the they try to keep that. The EIA is supposed to keep your data as secret as possible,
Sure.
but people can infer who's low and who's high.
It was interesting the comments on that particular thing. Wait, I don't know if you saw it, but we're talking about how you'd have a drone fly over and the tank lids would drop. Some comments were disagreeing with that as being a data point. So now I'm like, man, and I love to, I kind of trust the guy that's on the ground turning the wrench, right? But it's kind of interesting to see how there's different opinions even on what that is. So, but Brian, going back to what you do, right? Like, I guess what you kind of spend your time looking at. What is the next step? Like after it leaves your desk, what's the next piece of this?
Well, going back to when I was doing yield accounting, it's used by a lot of people. So that LP model is a predictive, we're buying this barrel, we think we're going to get this amount of gasoline out of it, this amount of distillate out of it. The yield accounting we're talking about is the after the fact, so you can kind of compare expected to actuals, or plan versus actuals, and say, okay, we were expecting to make 46% distillate, we made 43. So in the future, we need to, change our expectations.
Now, in back to so California, we're closing down or closed down two refineries here. One of our refineries produces 40% of our jet fuels. They need it because LAX is right there and all that good stuff. I think Texas probably has tons and tons of refineries. Like it seems kind of endless, but closing down a refinery, like what would that process even look like? I mean, we're really doing ourselves a huge disservice by doing that. I don't think anyone's paying attention to it. If you shut down one refinery, like it's not easy to build up another one, I think is what I'm getting after, right? It takes a lot of time to just get this structure in place, let alone knowing the life cycle and how everything works.
Yeah, that's a multifaceted question.
I'm good at that. I don't know where I'm going until it's over, you know?
First, I'll say I try to stay agnostic about the regulations. I'm not involved in influencing policy at all. My job is to make sure that we're obeying the policies that are there, and when it's convenient, trying to make a little profit every once in a while staying within those lines, ethical, legal, all of the above. I feel like I won't get into politics here, but I feel like we as Americans are really bipolar. Like we feel like we have to be all the way one way or all the way the other. And some president said the best energy policy is all of the above. And I feel that way too. I feel like the free market will dictate things within the confines of the laws set forth by EPA and ecology and the individual states to a certain extent. California has made decisions for themselves, and the market just has to respond to that. Yes, replacing refinery is a big, long, drawn out process. There aren't any new refineries being built in the United States. I don't think a brand new one has been built since probably the early 80s, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's a big deal. When I was in turnarounds, we were about to shut down a big refinery on the Gulf Coast. And literally within an hour of pulling the plug on a huge refinery, we got a call from, I think it was the Department of Energy, and another Gulf Coast refinery had tripped a big cat cracker that morning and all of a sudden lost a big percentage of the supply on the Gulf Coast, and they asked us to postpone that turnaround. I don't think they could tell us to, but when
Right.
the Department of Energy asks you to delay a turnaround, you do it. And we did. We put it off about 5 or 6 days, if I remember right. This was decades ago.
Interesting. I'm just envisioning Brian walking over to like a wall outlet to pull the plug on a giant refinery. Yeah. Anyways, well, the DOE, they've got a lot. There's so much stuff that comes at them. That's a lot to unpack there with what they do.
Oh yeah.
Right. And a lot of people there, like with the EIA, they doged themselves. They said, hey, I'm going to get laid off. I might as well take this money. So they're understaffed.
Yeah, I gotcha. We kind of touched on California's got cap and trade, and then I guess Washington has something in place too. But
Cap and invest is
yeah, cap and invest. Yeah. So just kind of curious, with these different states, California, I can drive across the border to Arizona and pay $2 less for a gallon of gas, right? So is this something that you guys are looking at as well in terms of, what state should we be working in, or what should we be creating on a state level? Because the other thing too I'm thinking about is, we've got biodiesel, which, got diesel, you got biodiesel, we got summer blend, we got winter blend. I'm thinking of all these different things that you have to create. And then I have another follow-up question to that, but I'll hold on to that one because I don't want to throw too much at you like I did before.
Yeah. So without getting into too much detail, yeah, refining companies with more than one asset will try to have an economy of scale. And yes, operating just across state lines is sometimes lucrative. If you can drive from Washington State a couple miles to Idaho and get gasoline for, I don't know, $1, $2 cheaper,
Sure.
it's a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. And then, when we're coming up with these, I guess, inventing these fuel blends, I know it's a huge difference between what they run in a NASCAR versus a F1 car. Car engines aren't necessarily changing. Like, we're not rebuilding cars. The fuel has to fit the vehicles.
Just off the top of my head, I've been in this for a long time. When I was a kid, they used MTBE. It was a really good oxygenate, and it was kind of, we call it hydrophobic. It kind of repelled water.
Okay.
It was really good. They started regulating it because there was some groundwater issues with it. I want to say in the 70s or 80s. Ethanol is another. It does a good job of bumping up the octane, but it's the opposite when it comes to water. It wants to absorb water. So that caused trouble in the industry when they started blending ethanol into stuff. And some people with boats that had, I think certain boats with like fiberglass gas tanks would kind of, ethanol would like turn it to jelly or something like that. So if you had really old cars with old O-rings and stuff like that, some of them couldn't handle it.
Okay.
No one, as far as I'm aware, you can't go to any gas station in the United States and get gasoline. You can get E-free, ethanol-free gasoline. You can't get gasoline with MTBE in it from a pump, but VP Racing will sell it. They're a boutique race fuel place like that can sell gasoline with MTBE.
Okay. Good to know. There's a VP race fuel station right on my parents' street, close by, and it's still I don't know, it's like nostalgic to me. They also sell Papa John's pizza, so if you need pizza, it's a great place to go. And if you're there late enough at night and you're filling up your truck, they'll and they have leftover pizza, they'll come out and they'll just give you a pizza. It's like,
How cool.
it's the coolest. It happened probably
That's awesome.
2 years ago. I was out there. The owner walks out, just hands me a full pepperoni pizza. My son, it was like 9:30 at night. His eyes lit up. He was so excited. It was great. So, what's the winter blend, summer blend thing?
I keep saying I'm not an engineer, but I'm not an engineer.
Well, let's say that you don't graduate engineering like with an engineering degree and all of a sudden know how to do stuff. You know what I mean? That's not how that works. You get out there and do the work and learn from people who are doing the work. And
Love it.
Kidding aside, and I'll try not to get too far off topic, but
Yeah.
in a refinery, brand new engineers straight out of school don't get paid very much right out of school. And it's like, and I'm sure it's still this way in the field, it's like getting hazed for a few years. But
right.
seriously, their value in the market between year 1 and year 3 just goes through the roof. And a lot of times, they'll be in some little refinery in the middle of nowhere just to get that first 2 or 3 years worth of experience, and then go to a different company. I'm sorry. What was your question?
We're talking summer and winter, and there's just the different blends there.
Yeah. So there's regulations on RVP, read vapor pressure, and basically it's because gasoline is more prone to vaporing off during the summer. So during the hot months, the RVP needs to be lower, and during the winter, they give a 1 pound RVP leeway for winter blends. So in U.S. mainland, most refineries put some butane into gasoline when they're doing winter blends. They usually can't get away with it during the summer. They've recently they've upped the ethanol percentage from 10 to 15 across the US. But I don't think a lot of people are doing the E15s yet. And I'm not a marketing person either.
Yeah.
But if they're not, it's because they can't pass that RVP test if they add the extra ethanol.
Interesting.
So being able, having permission to put 15% ethanol in and being able to do it and still meet spec is two different things.
That's really cool. Huh. All right. Well, we'll move over because I want to The real reason we brought you in today is to talk about how, if you were going to get into this career, this industry, just want to talk about, I think, high level, right? We have a lot of people that listen to this show that are high school, college, maybe trying to figure out where they're going next in life. And my own 7-year-old son he helps me edit this podcast. And I hope someday it sparks something as far as interest in just the energy industry in general, right? I think it's an irreplaceable industry. I know it is, but talking to people that are interested in getting into this, like, what would you do different if you were going to go back, to the very beginning, or would you maybe do the same exact thing?
It's so cliche to say it, but I would not change a single thing. I always thought that I would get promoted to some job where everything I've done before was not applicable, but it just builds on itself. I've told a lot of young people that this industry is a great industry to be in. I was talking earlier about, the instant gratification of, putting your hands on something. And I love Mike Rowe. I'm sure you listen to Mike Rowe, but I
Dirty
love
jobs
his,
with micro. Yeah.
yeah, I love his philosophies and it's just good sense. And the refining industry is a I don't want to call it like a last bastion, but it is a place where someone with a high school diploma that has some good common sense and a solid work ethic can make a fantastic career. If I was a young person that didn't plan to go to any kind of trade school or any kind of community college, so many young people get on as a contractor, start as a laborer in a refinery, and people notice if you just have solid work ethic, you do what you say you're going to do, and you follow through, people notice. And a lot of people get picked up that way with one of the majors, with and even the contract companies that operate in these refineries, they have fantastic, benefits, healthcare, all that. A lot of companies, I believe, still have programs where they'll pay for part of your school. Yeah, it's a great career. And I was talking earlier about how we're kind of bipolar as Americans. We either think you're all the way tree hugger or, you know, radically the opposite. I've been in this industry for over 30 years, and never met a single person at work that didn't love the environment, that never met a single person that wanted to cause pollution. I think, Peter, yesterday I mentioned to you someone on Bloomberg or something said the shopper at Bass Pro is the same sort of person that shops at REI. When they have time off from work, they want to do recreation, they want clean water, they want to go fishing, they want to, go deep sea fishing, hiking, surfing, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, but one of the guys I talked to, he's up in Ventura, oil and gas guy, and it's like, what is he doing when he's not working? He's going to a lot of Porsche events, so he's a Porsche guy. He doesn't own one, but he loves going to the hangouts. And then he's surfing, right, with his kids, and so, but he's in the oil and gas industry, right? And I mean, he's doing we're all people. We all do the same thing. We love what we love, and we do what we do. Doesn't mean you're one way or the other. And kind of getting into, so I know you're not an engineer, right? But there's this knowledge transfer that we talk about, and we steal a lot of conversation ideas from Collide. They talk about this a lot, but I've always been interested in it as well, because in any industry, you have this generation above, right? And trying to get the next generation in, and there's skills. So there's things we can teach, like hands-on things, and then there's also experience, right? So is it true that experience can only be gotten by doing it, or can some of that somehow be transferred down? Like, have you gone through things that you could teach people? And the only sound answer that I've gotten for myself is I can tell people what not to do, right? Because I think we're always learning. But how would you describe that transfer and kind of bringing up the next generation besides just hard work?
That person to person knowledge transfer is essential. Like I said earlier, a brand new engineer right out of school is not worth a lot, but that person goes through the gauntlet for a couple of years and it's just exponentially worth more money. Every generation always says, "Oh, this new generation coming up, they're gonna wreck us." But I'm encouraged by what I see. The young people, my kids and other young adults, their same age, I think they're taking us to the next level. They care about the environment. they also want to make money, and they also don't want, they want to be able to drive to Austin on the weekends and have a good time.
Yeah, I gotcha.
I say the best combination is book learning and field experience.
Gotcha. Well, before we wrap up our time, something fun that I learned about you is that you are a master of clean jokes. So I want to put you on the spot. We're talking about, oil and gas. You got to have one good thing or one good joke that we can leave behind. And I'll give you a second. We can make it look like you knew this off the top of your head, but it's all right.
Man, well, I won't tell you a joke. I'll tell you about a joke. So
Okay.
at the at the refineries I've worked at, I'm known for telling jokes that might or not might not be funny, but they're never dirty. And somebody made a comment about that, and I said, yeah, I have a rule. I only tell a joke that I would tell my mother or my pastor at church. I said, that doesn't mean I only tell clean jokes. It just means I say wildly inappropriate things to my mother and my
Right.
pastor.
Yeah, I gotcha. Oh man, I love it. Well, yeah, it's you know what, you keep it light. You got to have fun with it. And I think just the longevity of your career and where you've come. I just very thankful that you took the time to come on and talk with us.
All right, I appreciate it. I'll come back and talk about renewables next time.
Let's
All
do
That's
right.
a
it. Yeah, we'll
yeah.
do part two. We've done a couple of part twos, so that'd be great. We should dig into that more for sure.
It's
Yeah.
it's the future.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Brian.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Brian.